Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. In today's video we are going to be talking about a very small little problem that can harm or kill your plant. Now this is often seen among a lot of beginners because I do see a lot of images on Facebook groups and other groups as well wherein people have planted their small little tiny plant in a very large pot. So today's video is going to be related with the pot size. Yes, this also matters a lot with your plant. Now for example, I don't have a lot of empty pots, so just ignore the plant that is there in this pot. Just focus on the size of the pots that are there. So there are 4 pots over here. Now of course pots come in different sizes, but this is just an example to show you. By the end of the video it will be very clear to you. Now let's say we have a plant over here. This is a flowering plant. I'll put the name on the screen. So this is a plant. Now a lot of times when you buy your plants from the nursery, it is going to come in a black poly bag or probably in a very small little pot. Ideally it is advised that you have to repot them. You can put them in your own soil mix because we are not very sure what kind of soil is the nursery people using. So now let's say that you have purchased a plant and you have potted it in this small little pot. Probably this is around 5 inch of pot. So the plant is doing quite well. Now every plant, in order for it to grow healthy, you need to repot it just before the growing season, not during the dormant period. Now let's say this plant is not root bound, but let's take this plant as an example. Let's say that this plant is in a 5 inch pot. Now let's say that this plant was root bound and it's time to change the pot for this plant in order for it to grow bigger and healthy, because it has completely got root bound. This is just an example. So now if I have to repot this plant to the next bigger size, I cannot use this pot and directly go to a large pot like this. Now this I think is around 10 inches or probably 12 inches pot. I'm not very sure, but this is a very large pot. So you can see if I'm going to put this plant in this pot, you can see how large the pot is. And this is what I have seen in a lot of groups, that they have a very large pot like this and then the plant is put into it and then they ask for help that what exactly is going on with the plant, because the plant is almost on the stage of dying. So never ever put, this is the biggest mistake you can do, is putting your plant in a very large pot. So now let's say that this plant was root bound and now it's time to repot. Now repotting usually happens probably once in a year or 1.5 years. Again, that depends upon your plant. Some plants like to be root bound, some plants do not like to be root bound. Plants that do not like to be root bound will have a very slow growth or stunned growth, whereas some plants will like to be root bound. So you do not need to be worried about the root bound plants. Probably in some other video I will talk about those plants, but right now we will just focus on the pot size. Now let's say that this was a 5 inch pot, then you'll have to go with a size bigger than this. So the next bigger size pot will be this one. So you can see if I'm going to put this in this, it's kind of matching with the pot, with the plant size and the pot. The pot is not too big and the pot is not too small compared to the previous one. So in this way you will put it into this pot and the plant will slowly start to grow. The roots will have enough space to stretch their roots out because it's a size bigger than the previous pot that it was getting root bound in. Now let's say after this, after a year or so, or depending upon your environment and climate, how fast the plant starts to grow, and before the next growing season comes, if you feel that the plant is root bound, then you are going to move to the next bigger pot of this one. So let's say that this pot is already root bound, so the next bigger pot will be this one. So you will move your plant to the next bigger pot. Again, that would be 1 or 2 size bigger than the previous pot. And then let's say if in this pot the plant has become big or root bound, then you will move to this pot, that is the largest pot over here. So I'll give you a side look of it. So you can see the smallest one, then the next biggest one, then the next biggest one, and then the largest one. Do not go directly from this size to the last one. Now guys, what's going to happen in this is, now usually a lot of the plants like a little bit of moisture in the soil. They prefer slight moisture in the soil. But when you're going to have a plant that is small and the roots are small and you're going to put it in a very large pot like this, when you have a large pot, there is going to be a lot of soil. Now when you're going to have a lot of soil, it will take a lot of time for that soil to dry out. Apart from that, the roots of the plant are still very small because they are contained in that small container. Suddenly putting it out in a very big pot, the plant can either have a transplant shock, or the plant will slowly start having issues because there is going to be more soil, which means that there is going to be more amount of moisture or more amount of water. Even though the excess water will run out of the drain hole, but the soil tends to retain moisture. More soil means more moisture, which means that the plant will be sitting in a moist soil for a longer period of time. That can lead to root rot. Now when this happens is, you will start noticing a lot of the leaves will start to turn yellow and will start to fall. Over the period of time, all of the leaves will start to fall off because there is too much of moisture in the pot. Plants do like slight moisture but not excess moisture. Apart from that, you will also be adding in fertilizers. Now if the pot is big, you're going to add more fertilizer. Now when you're going to add more fertilizer, the roots of the plants are still very small. A lot of people think that if you're going to put a plant in a larger pot, the plant will grow bigger faster. That's not the case. In fact, even before the plant can grow bigger, there would be other issues that will come along. Now if you're going to add too much of fertilizers, the roots are very small, there will be too much of fertilizers in the soil that can easily burn the roots. If you're going to add less fertilizer, then the plant will not be able to absorb that fertilizer. So you can see there will be a couple of problems when you are going to put a small plant in a very large pot. So always follow the process of small pot, then a little bigger, then a little bigger, so you can slowly start going. Now of course, this entire process of transferring from one pot to another is not going to happen within a year. This takes a couple of years for them to transfer. So be very careful. This is something that a lot of people tend to make mistake. Don't be in a hurry. I know repotting is a very long and tedious process. A lot of people do not want to do that and want to go for a shortcut. So rather than going through the process of smaller pot, then the next bigger pot, they directly go to the larger pot, and that's when the plant will start having issues. So this is a very small little problem that you can easily handle by choosing the right type of pot for your plant. So whenever you are buying plants from the nursery, go for the pot size according to the plant. Probably the plant might be a little bit more bigger than this, then you can probably use a little bigger pot. Always choose the pot according to the size of the plant. Probably you are buying a very large plant, that doesn't mean that you're going to put it in a small pot. If you are buying a very large plant, then of course you'll have to use a larger pot. So it all goes according to the pot size. Pot size is extremely important if you want to grow healthy plants. You cannot just randomly use any pot. If the plant is small, do not use a larger pot. If the plant is large, do not use a smaller pot. It's as simple as that. This is something that you will have to check what plant you are purchasing, whether the plant prefers to be in a smaller pot or the plant prefers to be in a larger pot. According to the size, according to the requirement of the plant, put your plants into the pot. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep planting.